Now, from Push TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good morning and welcome to All Indiana Politics. I'm Garrett Bergquist. Phil Sanchez is off this week. The race for mayor of Indianapolis is coming into focus. Mayor Joe Hogsett on Tuesday announced he will run for a third and final term. This ends months of speculation. If he is reelected and serves a full 4-year term, Hogsett would become the second longest serving mayor in the city's history. I spoke with the mayor this week about his decision to seek a third term. Let's welcome in Mayor Joe Hogsett right now. Mayor, thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be with you, Garrett.
So the week before your announcement, you said you were 50-50 on whether or not you would run. What finally tipped you over to yes?
Oh, I think after lengthy discussions that I had with family members and other friends about the need to continue the progress that was being made during my first term, that unfortunately was interrupted by the global pandemic, a once-in-a-century event, that we still had a lot of progress for the city of Indianapolis to accomplish, and that's really what tipped the balance.
And that leads me into my next question. Do you regard this as a do-over for second-term goals that got derailed by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, there's no question that things slowed down for everybody, the world included, during the last 3 years. And so, yes, indeed, I hope that if allowed by the voters to be mayor for another term, that we'll be able to pick up where we left off when the world was overcome by the pandemic and continue the progress that was being made at that time. We've got a lot left to do. I have loved serving as mayor, and I will enjoy, if given the opportunity, to serve another term 4 more years.
Bipartisanship played a major role in your campaign speech. You will have a primary challenger. How do you hold to that when you face a partisan primary?
Well, I've always had primary opponents. In the first 2 campaigns, I faced primary opposition. And that doesn't really affect how I try to lead the city. I think my record is pretty clear in working with the council in what many consider a bipartisan way. I like to consider it nonpartisan. We've put budgets together year after year with broad bipartisan support. We've been able to accomplish things where Republicans and Democrats have worked together. So the fact that a primary would be an election contest, just like November would be an election contest if I'm fortunate enough to win the primary, that doesn't really get in the way of continuing to lead in a nonpartisan way.
State Representative Robin Shackelford is challenging you in the primary. She told us the city, in her opinion, still focuses too much on the enforcement side of public safety and does not give enough attention to dealing with the root causes of crime. Your response to that?
Well, I would beg to disagree in terms of a $45 million commitment over 3 years to community-based neighborhood organizations that are not enforcing anything but the peace. They are neighborhood organizations that are very well equipped to provide the community members and to prevent violence before it occurs. So it's a proactive approach to the level of gun violence that too many urban areas are experiencing today. And I think Indianapolis is on the cutting edge of using the American Rescue Plan dollars in creative, important ways to prevent crime before it happens. And that's what we are intending to do.
Now, violent crime has risen in the city during your tenure, even though it is dropping this year by about anywhere from about 12 to 17%. What do you say to voters who don't think you have a handle on this?
Well, I think you just said it, Garrett. The numbers are going in the right direction. The truth is that during my first term, we slowed the increase to be incremental in terms of the incidence of gun violence. And then at the beginning of the second term, I was not even 2 months into the second term before COVID and the pandemic encircled the globe. Since that time, most every major American city has seen an exponential rise in the level of gun violence. That is largely, I think, tied to the ravages of the pandemic. But now, because of the implementation of our $150 million anti-crime violence reduction program, we're starting to see meaningful change and change in the right direction. As of today, I think we are nearly 15 to 16% lower in the number of criminal homicides. We're about the same percentage decrease in the number of non-fatal shootings. So while we have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot more commitment that we have to make, the numbers are trending in a favorable direction that will help keep Indianapolis as safe as we can possibly make it.
You focused a lot on development downtown during your campaign announcement speech. What about the rest of the city, such as the East Side? How does any of this help the 17% of Indy residents who live in poverty?
Well, I will tell you that just the other day, Garrett, I was pleased to make our 8th neighborhood Lift Indy announcement. These are 8 different neighborhoods throughout really all 4 corners of the city where we're making a 3-year unprecedented investment in those neighborhoods. So, yes, obviously downtown gets a lion's share of attention because it is the economic engine that drives so much of Indiana. But I think it's also fair to say that this administration over the last 7 years has made unprecedented levels of investments throughout neighborhoods and our parks and other quality of life, quality of place investments. Just the other day, we celebrated the southern half of the Monon Trail being widened. So those types of investments are improving the quality of life in our neighborhoods. And I hope that we'll be able to continue to do that for another 4 years.
You would become the second longest serving mayor of Indianapolis if you are reelected. What do you say to voters who might think it's time to give the job to someone else?
Well, I would just simply say that that's up to them. But I would also point out that I have tried to be a fair and nonpartisan leader of our city throughout the 7 years that I have served. And frankly, that's exactly who I am and the way I'll continue to lead. I have told people time and time again, I've never run for mayor or sought to be mayor because I wanted to be the mayor of a particular political party. My job is to represent all of Indianapolis equally, fairly. And that's precisely the kind of mayor that I'll continue to be. I'll also say that I have been faced with both tough decisions and easy decisions. And I hope that I have been successful in making the tough decisions as best as I can and helping enhance our city by making investments that really improve the quality of life.
Mayor Joe Hogsett, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Garrett.
Coming up, we break down a busy week in politics with Indiana's best political team. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics with 2 members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Allie Bartlett and Democrat Laura Beck. Let's begin with Hogsett's announcement. This sets up a contested Democratic primary for mayor. Laura, let's begin with you. Is this a clash between the Democratic Party's more traditionalist and progressive wings?
Well, I don't know if I would characterize it as bad. I think it's just not surprising when you have a county that has essentially become one party. So Marion County really has become a Democrat county at this point in time. So it's not surprising that you have different visions for what different candidates believe in and what they think. And I wouldn't read too much into it in terms of progressive versus establishment. I think it's just two different visions and two different perspectives. And that's what a primary does. For somebody like me, I'm not a huge fan of primaries, but I also understand, as Allie probably does on the Republican side, that sometimes it's healthy for the party to have those.
Allie, Republicans have consistently hit Hogsett over the violent crime rate in Indianapolis. That angle did not work in the Marion County prosecutor race. Will they need to find a different line of attack?
Honestly, Garrett, I think that it's not necessarily a line of attack as much as it is a real problem. So I don't think we're going to step away from that talking point because it continues to be a problem. You know, I heard in your interview with the mayor that he talked about declining violent crime rates, but we're still going into the third year of record homicide rates. So whether it's declining or not, it's a major problem in this city. It's a reason for businesses closing. It's a problem, and they either have to face it and own it and try to take it head on, or they're going to just continue to put their head in the sand over it.
Allie, staying with you for a moment, and Laura alluded to this just now, how do Republicans flip a mayoral seat in an increasingly blue Marion County?
Yeah, as we saw with the prosecutor's race, which I think was as ripe as any for a Republican to win, especially a fantastic candidate like Cindy Krasko, it's an uphill battle. But the good news is that people like Cindy Krasko and the other Republicans that ran in this race in November have started to put in the real groundwork to connect with voters in ways that maybe we haven't in the past. I think we're going to continue to be out there talking to the people in the neighborhoods, like you said, business owners. They care a lot about what's happening in our city right now because it's not a healthy business environment. So Republicans are going to continue to hit the ground running. We're going to continue to be out there talking to voters about what we can do to bring this city back to life because it's not there right now.
Laura,
Karen, I just want to jump in on this, though. I think that is that argument fell flat with the voters, with the Republican prosecutor candidate and their strategy. They essentially used crime, tried to beat Ryan Mears over the head with crime. He was outspent. They had outside money come in, and that message didn't resonate. And so I think Mayor Hogsett, as he articulated very well in his interview with you, he's really going into the amounts of resources that are behind this, amount of work that's going into this. So this isn't people burying their head in the sand. I think this is a national issue that everybody's facing, and they've been very proactive with it.
Well, Laura, how do Democrats hold this seat if people are upset over crime and potholes in the streets?
Well, I think one of the ways that we address potholes is that we continue to advocate and talk to our Indiana General Assembly, which has a super Republican supermajority, about having a more fair road funding formula for Marion County. If you live outside of Marion County, you're getting the same amount of money that Marion County is getting for much less lane mileage. And so that needs to be fixed. And I think if the Republicans want to take that seat back, that's something that they have to go to their people and try and get that fixed and changed. That's one of the main issues we have with road funding formula. But I feel like we've got some options, and I feel like we've got two strong candidates. I think Mayor Hogsett's very strong going into this.
Laura, I'll let Allie respond to that, and then we'll have to
I really don't think you can blame the General Assembly for roads that the city of Indianapolis is responsible for. That just doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you break down where the state is responsible for roads and where the city is responsible for roads, it's the roads in Marion County and Indianapolis that are filled with potholes. I mean, the state of Indiana's road funding formula, like you said, is the same across the board throughout the state. And so if the city of Indianapolis can't work with the funds it has on its own and through the state of Indiana, that seems like a leadership problem to me.
Allie, we'll have to leave it there for right now. We'll have much more in a moment.
The population in Jefferson County is a lot different.
Let's leave it there for now. We'll come right back in just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back. Joe Hogsett wasn't the only major political announcement this week. Former President Donald Trump officially launched his 2024 presidential campaign that same night. Allie Bartlett, Republicans have fared poorly in 4 straight elections since Donald Trump became president. Two-part question here. 1, does this jeopardize Herschel Walker's chances in Georgia? 2, do Republicans run the risk of a repeat of 2020?
Yeah, so, well, I don't think that we've done poorly in every election. We did just take the House of Representatives back in Congress, so I will point out that win, which we do consider a win. I'm not sure that this is going to have an impact on the Herschel Walker race. I mean, people have known that Herschel Walker is endorsed by and affiliated with Donald Trump since the beginning, so I'm not sure that it makes much of a difference or an impact in that race. And I think that Republicans are going to be in a good position regardless as we move into 2024 in discussions about the presidential race.
Laura Beck, your party put a lot of resources into boosting candidates it felt Democrats could beat this past cycle. Do you see that happening again? And if so, does that risk a second Trump term?
So, I mean, I think a couple things about it. I mean, I think when it comes to Donald Trump being on the ballot and the people he supports, I think it's imperative that we do whatever we can to beat them. And I think the American people shared that opinion across the nation, based on the election results that we saw. But at the same time, I think that we have to continue to sharpen our message and sharpen our candidates and sharpen our focus. So we're not just the anti-Trump. We're talking about all of the other very positive things and very positive agenda items that we're focusing on, such as the Inflation Reduction Act, such as curbing student loan debt, such as healthcare affordability, and those type of issues. As well as boosting the economy. So those are key things that we have to focus on. What happens with Donald Trump is whenever Donald Trump inserts himself into anything, the story becomes about Donald Trump. So he takes up all the air in the room, and I think that makes it harder for Republicans, although we are also seeing some key donors who had previously advised and funded Trump stepping away from him. So I'm hopeful that he will ultimately not prevail in a primary, and we can have some reasonable discourse moving into a general election. I think that would be really good and really healthy for the country at this point in time.
Now, former Vice President Mike Pence just released a new memoir in which he details the disagreements he had with former President Trump in the days leading up to and after January 6th. Allie, is Pence trying to tee up a presidential run of his own? And if so, how's he survived the primary if Trump supporters view him as a traitor?
Yeah, I think, I can't say for certain whether or not the vice president is teeing up her presidential run. I think if we look at historical moves by vice presidents, it would probably fall in line with, the past to see him put his name in the hat for a presidential run. I think he is a very different candidate than Donald Trump, as we all know. And I think his story about January 6th shows that, whether or not I see a clear path to victory there. I don't know enough about what the primary field will look like to speculate on that at this point. But I do think if he decides to get in, he will have support from Republicans that felt that he made a courageous move on January 6th. And so I think he does have a base there, and that he'll be able to use that base.
Laura, if you're still there, how concerned should Democrats be about a 2024 Pence run? This is someone who would not come in with the same level of baggage that Donald Trump would.
Oh, I think we would welcome a 2024 Pence run, frankly. I think Mike Pence's biggest problem is that he pledged fealty to Donald Trump for the entire term, even in 2016. He just pledged complete fealty to him. And all of a sudden on January 6th, he got a backbone, fortunately. But he's on this image rehab plan. And I don't necessarily know how well it's going to go for him, especially because the night that he had his book announcement, or the day he had his book rollout, is the same day that Trump decided to announce for president. So I found that somewhat interesting, that the timing on that. But I don't think I don't think Mike Pence could get through a primary at this point. I actually think he and his wife are really incredibly nice people. But I just don't think that they're going to offer the red meat that the base wants.
Thank you both. We'll be back in a moment after this.
Take All Indiana Politics on the go with you. Download our podcast now. Part of the All Indiana Podcast Network and allindianapodcastnetwork.com.
Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. You can also find our brand new All Indiana Politics podcast as part of the All Indiana Podcast Network at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.